When Amazon laid me off in October of 2025, the first feeling I had surprised everyone, including myself. It was relief. Yet 48 hours later, everything fell apart. This is a story about the layoff and aftermath, the good, the bad, the ugly, but the honest take. Before my layoff from Amazon, I was a data scientist working in the advertising division with 3.5 years of experience and a 2-year master's from a relatively well-known university. I felt that I was on track. At any dinner party, on any date, I felt pride and satisfaction when I would let the other person that I worked in such a role at Amazon, where I would be having many different people message me every week on LinkedIn, asking me for advice, asking me to talk about my experience, and I felt that the role that I had was truly valued. After spending most of my 20s lost and unsure of what path to pursue, I felt that having this data scientist job at Amazon gave meaning to my life and made it feel like that I had made the right decisions up until this point and that I was on a set path. In the months leading up to the layoff, I was exhausted. I had had my 10th manager in 3.5 years, which included a change in the vision of the team, a change in the projects we were working on, and just a fundamental change in what the responsibilities were needed for my role. I felt I had to keep grinding in order to prove to my new manager that I was going to be successful. And that just caused me to get more and more exhausted. That grind it worked for me for the first 3 years at Amazon, but wasn't going to work for me at the very end of my time at Amazon. And then 48 hours later, everything fell apart. My identity was in crisis. I felt that I had no more morning structure, no goals to work towards. Even the people that I'd seen every single day for the past 6 months were now no longer there on a daily basis. I had thought that losing the job would be the hard part, but I was wrong. So one of the key takeaways that I learned from my layoff is this idea of an identity trap. I let my role at Amazon consume my sense of self and influence who I thought I was. And the worst part about it is I didn't even realize that I confused my job identity with my sense of self until after the layoff had happened. This happened because when I had gotten that initial job at Amazon, I had gotten a lot of praise from my family, from my friends, which caused me to feel like really good feelings about myself. But then similarly, when I lost the job, it felt like all those good feelings that people had towards me went away with it. 32 years of getting good grades in school, getting into a hard master's program, getting a high-paying job at a prestigious tech company had trained me to believe that my self-worth was reliant on these things. But I eventually had to realize that even after the layoff, that my work had value at Amazon, even if the company ultimately decided that it didn't. But ask yourself, if your job entitled disappeared tomorrow, who would you be? And if this question scares you, that is the answer. The second thing that I realized after reflecting on my time at Amazon after being laid off is that I spent more time trying to fix the situation that I was in rather than fix my sense of self. During this time that I'm now figuring it out, I've essentially am paying what I will call to be a sovereignty tax, which essentially means using the savings that I have to fundamentally build my sense of self up from the ground instead of just using those savings to prolong my time until I can find a new job. What this looks like practically is it means I cannot sit there doom scrolling on LinkedIn job boards, agonizing over whether or not the next job I get can replace the job I had at Amazon. It means taking more intentional walks each day and having a slower pace of living, and really being mindful of how do I want to structure my life and sense of self to be more resilient to these external challenges. And it's important to create systems in my life to allow me to do these things without having to constantly use willpower. Because as my willpower would drain throughout the day, I would find myself going into spirals by the evening, thinking that how am I going to get myself out of the situation? So by having a system in place, I don't have to use as much willpower in my day to maintain my mental and physical health. And I can begin to move towards my goals in a way that feels principled and constructive rather than just reactionary. So if you're in a hard season right now where you're spiraling and doing things that you don't want to do or know that you shouldn't do, don't rely on willpower. Build systems to make sure that you can remove some of the willpower from the equation. The third takeaway that I had from my layoff was the following question. Am I building towards a life that I really want to have? Or am I just running away from something? As I kind of went through these thoughts over the past couple of months, I realized that I do want to build towards a life that I feel is exciting, that I feel is fulfilling, and I feel it isn't something that is just outsourced my life satisfaction to a company based on how much they're willing to pay me or what they're willing to call my job. And what I realized was, even though the layoff at the initial part felt like a setback in my life, I realized it was just one of a many tapestry of experiences that I've previously had that helps to inform the next chapter of where I want to take my life. So if I could go back and talk to myself pre-layoff, I would give myself 3 specific pieces of advice. Number 1 is to stop confusing stability with safety. Just because something feels safe does not mean that it is valuable. Number 2 would be to build my identity outside of my job. This means things like hobbies, friendships, relationships, things that I honestly knew I should be investing in, but never really could bring myself to do, given that the external validation I felt I was receiving from those things wasn't as large as the validation I'd feel from my job. And the third and arguably most important piece of advice I give to myself is it's okay to not be ready. Ready, and the feeling of being ready, is just an excuse to not put yourself outside your comfort zone. It's okay to fail. It's okay to go and try something different without knowing if it's going to work. What matters is just starting and getting that experience and perspective while learning as you go along. So even if you're in a layoff right now, you're afraid of one coming, or you're already just feeling behind, it's okay. I hear you. And you are right in the place where you need to be right now. So let me know in the comments if any of what I've said has resonated with you, or if you have your own kind of learnings, whether from a layoff, fears of being laid off, or even just feeling you're stuck in life. I think just being able to talk about this more can allow all of us to feel more connected and more in control of where we are going in our lives.